Hello, friends, and welcome to the Reclamation Podcast. I'm your host, Megan Colleen Johnson, and I'm here to guide us in raw conversations about thriving in life and work, so that together we can step into personal agency and stop letting life happen to us. We'll cover topics like health, boundaries, communication, finances, and worthiness. That badass business you've been dreaming of, it's not so far off. The desire to wake up feeling fully alive, it's right around the corner. Okay, welcome to the show, Linzy. It's so great to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So I'm really excited about our conversation today. Just for everyone listening, Linzy and I met back when I worked as a student within my university's marketing department. Linzy was working full-time for the marketing department. And kind of from there, our relationship developed from like a boss and a student to then doing some client work. Linzy was really gracious and allowed me to design her first website and brand. And now looking back, like I would totally redesign it a very different way now, but that's okay. We had a lot of fun, and then we did a bunch of photo shoots and such, which was fun, and developed kind of a friendship mentorship, which is really fun. So I'm really excited to reconnect with Linzy today and get to share some of what she's been up to with all of you. So Linzy, I would love if you could just share a little bit of kind of what you're doing now and kind of give your own introduction as well.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I've been kind of running this. I mean, I think a lot of creatives probably have a hard time introducing themselves because usually you're involved in a zillion different things. And so I kind of am too. So I primarily do a lot of gigging, whether that's like corporate events or weddings or parties or things like that. I just take a lot of those kinds of gigs and play around town whenever there's a need. While I'm also a worship leader. So right now I'm on staff at a church leading worship on Sunday mornings and helping arrange all the other things going on at the church in regards to music. And then I am a mom to two little boys at home. They are 3 and 1. And so it's kind of a crazy combination alongside of a lot of other creative projects. But that's primarily what my life consists of right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's so many things. And I totally understand the kind of the creative introduction. We often tend to have our hands in a lot of different things at once.
Yes, most definitely.
So part of why I started this podcast specifically is to kind of bring to light some of what it looks like on people's journey from like, you know, when they first had the spark of creativity or spark to start a business, through maybe the hardships and difficult things that they went through to kind of get where they are today. And, you know, being a creative and a small business owner, I feel like we always have the ups and downs, and it's always kind of an ongoing journey to see what's coming next. But I would love if you could kind of speak to what your journey looked like and what drew you to music, kind of just what that passion as it's developed, what that has looked like for you.
Yeah. It actually started for me a super young age. I think I was 4, and it was like ironic. My family's all from Europe, and so they put an accordion on my lap at 4, and that was like my introduction to music. But it just started in me this like, oh, this is pretty amazing that there's this thing that I can use to just express myself, this music and write and just create with this kind of alternative language. And so it just became my escape. I started playing piano and singing, and it took the form of, you know, playing in church, singing in church, doing choir, singing at festivals, events, weddings, things like that, even from a really young age. But more so, it was just kind of my escape, kind of my safe place. I would just kind of spend hours playing the piano at home. There was a lot of conflict in my home growing up, and so it was always just the place I would go and just play for hours. I learned like chords and playing by ear at a really young age, and so I just kind of sat in that, and I would just use that and come up with songs for hours a day, all growing up. And it was just it became and grew into this pretty intense passion within me. And I knew I wanted to grow my craft. I thought, man, this would be awesome if I could do this for a living. And I knew the only way I could do that is by getting more skilled and also developing the skills to make it a business, which is tricky. And everyone kind of doubts you and kind of tells you, are you sure you want to make your passion your career? And I was like, I think I really do. Like, I think this is something that is in my blood. This is the thing that makes me tick. This is the thing that gives me life. Like, why would I want to do anything else? Like, can't I just figure out how to make this a career? So I went to school for it. I did a double major in voice and piano. And I decided to go to school in LA, mostly because they had a program I wanted to study, but also because it was in kind of a music-centric city. And I knew if I wanted to make it a career, I needed to be somewhere where I could develop a network that would help lead to some work after just, training. And so I went out there and did, you kind of have to do your groundwork with any artist, or you probably find this in graphics and marketing too, but you kind of have to start from the ground up with doing a lot of like take whatever gigs come your way and kind of do your time in a way before you get on the cool lists, the lists that get you into the right kind of gigs. And so I did a lot of that, just like random gigs around town. I led worship at a bunch of different churches, and I was in an indie band for a while. We did a couple of records and played some shows and did a couple of mini tours. And it really served as like this discovery time for me as I kind of figured out my style and my voice, what context I enjoyed playing in, whether that was church or like bars or like the big stage, or whatever it was. You kind of have to figure out, what is the context I like. And then just the creative community, like what community do I like being surrounded by? What feeds my spirit in that way? And so I just had a lot of awesome opportunities out there, and it really gave me like, okay, I can do this for a career. But I graduated, got married, and we moved to Chicago, which is where I met you, Megan. But my husband went to grad school, and so one of us had to make the money, which left me with that responsibility. And I didn't have any network in Chicago when it came to music. And so I just started applying for anything and everything that would keep us afloat, and ended up working in the marketing department with you at a university there. And it was this really weird combination of like a huge blessing to have something steady. And I learned so much from just the people I worked with and the community I was in. But I think creatively, it kind of sent me to a little bit of a darker space because I wasn't doing music. I wasn't doing this thing that I felt like I was created for. And so about 2 years into my role there, I switched to doing full-time music again. And it was scary because I had to kind of, again, do my time and take every gig I could get and try to meet with every person I could get. And, but it didn't take long for that to start developing again. So I ended up playing a ton of different churches. Every Sunday morning I was playing a different place. I would just play random events and gigs and corporate things as they would come. And then I started writing again, and I recorded and released a record in 2015 that really helped launch me in a lot of the kind of worship church stuff, Christian music, contemporary Christian music industry stuff that I ended up doing. So it actually, it's like the pain of getting there was worth the product that I got to experience on the other side. So since then, we moved to the Bay Area, and now I'm out here kind of doing the same thing. Just I'm working at a church, leading worship really often. And yeah, I'm playing as many gigs as I can get, but it kind of looks different every single week. And I kind of love that about what I do. So
that's awesome. I kind of want to circle back because when you were just talking about working at the university, something I think is really interesting about being a creative, sometimes we're required to go through these seasons where we have to take jobs or, various roles that don't fit kind of our passion. And I'd love if you could kind of speak to that a little bit. I've had a few different people reach out to me recently when I talk about like the 9 to 5. I'm kind of like, I don't know. I speak about that a lot, how I don't personally love 9 to 5 jobs. And I just find them to be kind of soul sucking for me personally. But I think a lot of people do resonate with that, especially the creative types. And the more the world becomes able to have remote workers, I feel like more and more people find that it's more life-giving to be able to spend life, with family members and kind of having a little bit of space between work and life. So I'd love if you could kind of speak to that a little bit more. And I guess if there's anything that you feel like you could add to that conversation.
Yeah, I think it's tricky because for most of us creatives, we are doing some comment or entrepreneurs just in general, you're always a self-starter and you're always doing all these things. You've got your hands in so many things. But then there's like these dry spells where you don't have work and you're like, I need to have work right now. We need this. And that's a tricky spot to be in. And so I've kind of always had like another thing going on the side.
Yeah.
Often it's like I was teaching music for a while and it was like, okay, every month I knew we'd at least make this much because that is my teaching income, so no matter which gigs I got, like we had that base. But I think it is hard, especially when you are a creative type, because you do kind of like that flexibility, the freedom. The 9 to 5 often, while it's stable, it feels stifling. And so I think you just kind of have to figure out for yourself what works for you. For me, it's just always having something in my career that's stable, but not a huge chunk of my time. So when I was in marketing at the university, I was 40 hours a week, or 50, sometimes depending on what we were doing.
Yeah.
And I think it was great for that season because I learned a lot. And actually, it's crazy to me to look back and think about how much I learned about just marketing. That actually helped me as an entrepreneur. Like it was totally purposeful. But that amount of time just in the office with my brain space somewhere else, I think was really hard for me to go home and then be creative. Like that was just too much out of balance for me. And so now right now I'm currently working 30 hours a week in more of a role type thing that's outside of my business. And that's probably like peak for me, like as much as I can do. Probably would ideally like to do a little bit less in the kind of steady flow of things. But I do think a lot of people relate to that, just having some stability, something is coming that still is in line with your passions. Like marketing is still in line with music because you can't do music if you can't market yourself, rather than doing something totally random. And I think a lot of people just need to find something that doesn't feel totally random. Although I'll tell you an example. My best friend, she's a musician, an amazing musician in LA, and she works at a hat shop during the week. And she said it's the best thing ever because she just gets to sell hats, which is like totally unrelated to her, field and her passion. And
That's
then
amazing.
She goes home and she writes songs and plays shows all night. And it's just like, she's like, feels like she's finally found that balance. And, I totally see that for her, how that works. Just having something unrelated, unpressured, so that all of her creative energy is going into her passion. So
that's amazing. I love that so much.
Yeah. She also gets all these cool hats, so that's a nice bonus.
A perk for sure. Oh, that's so fun. That kind of leads into our primary topic, really, where we had talked about having you discuss kind of what this gig life looks like, especially as you're a mom. I haven't actually had any moms on the podcast yet, and I would love to kind of hear what that looks like as well. We've kind of talked about bouncing around in jobs and business and like 9 to 5, but I'd love to hear kind of more about what it's like to also integrate being a mom and family and being a wife and how you juggle. Like that's even more hats to juggle. And that's something that I personally don't relate to yet. Like I'm married, but I don't have the extra responsibility of also having kids yet. And so I'd love if you could kind of speak to what it's like to juggle mom life and work life.
Yeah, I'm super passionate about it because it's so hard. And I'm in the midst of it all the time. And I would think juggle is the perfect term to kind of use. It is such an interesting balance. I mean, you hit me at a kind of a funny week, even just this week. I think I played a wedding gig like out of town on Saturday, played a church on Sunday, worked a 14-hour day yesterday. And then like this morning I played a gig and I have another gig tonight. It's just like one of those, like it never looks that busy, but this week has just looked like insane. And so I think it is a juggle. I mean, you're just trying to figure out like, I really want my kids to know that they are first. Like my attention is with them. My love is with them. But I also want them to see me pursuing passions and dreams and contributing to our family income. And it's just really interesting trying to figure out how to balance that. And honestly, I don't always do a great job, but I wouldn't have it any other way. Like it brings me so much joy to be able to do both those things. They're both such an integral part of my calling, I think, as a human, just to be a mom and to be just working in this field. I think there are no superhumans. I think we have this idea based on what we see on Instagram, Facebook, or blogs or whatever, that somewhere out there, somehow somebody has achieved the balance. The juggle has been like lifted and they just are in perfect line. And I just think it's a lie. Like, it's impossible because, you know, especially when you're an entrepreneur, like nothing is consistent. Like, everything's so random. Like, every gig is different. Every opportunity is different. When you're in church, like, ministry looks different all the time. And then when you're a mom, your kids are like changing constantly, you know, like you might have nap time like down for like 2 weeks. And then like the next week, they just don't want to nap, and like everything's thrown up in the air. So I think it's just, the juggle is like, I mean, the honest truth. And I'm sure that anybody that looks like they have it together, you know, probably has stories like I do of like, I'm taking a conference call with like a pillow against my head because I don't want the client to hear like my kid screaming across the room, you know, like it's just that kind of, I'm like humping in the car on the way to an event. Like, it's just like that. It's just a crazy kind of there's scenarios like that constantly. And it's just kind of what you're committing to if you want to do both. Like, you can't have this kind of dream in your head of what it might look like. But you do have to kind of face these struggles head on and just figure out what you can personally handle and what you are personally called to in that regard. So yeah, I think what the hard thing with, you know, being a mom, I like want my kids to have my presence. I think that's what they want. That's like all kids really want, is just your presence and your attention. They just need to know that you're there, not just like in body, but in mind and spirit with them. And so I think that's what's tricky, because your head as an entrepreneur is always thinking about the next thing you should be doing, dreaming about the next song you should be writing. Then, you know, it's always kind of somewhere else. And so I think I have to be really disciplined that when I'm home with my kids, and this is something I'm really still working on, but I'm home with them, I'm really investing in them, and not just putting everything on pause to be with them, but finding ways to incorporate them into the things that I'm doing. I mean, on like the event I played this morning, it's like a pretty family friendly, like women's event. And so my kids are like on stage during sound check with me, eating their snacks and playing with their toys. Like, you know, it's just kind of like, people just have to understand that is my life, and I'm not going to apologize that kids are a part of that. You know, they're a huge part of my life. And so I'm on a client call with a contractor, and my kid is like, had the stomach flu the other day. And I was just trying to wrestle through like, you know, muting myself just in time to deal with that. And then unmute, you know, it's just like this constant thing that just, you have to face. But I think as much as you can, including your kids in the process, instead of just treating them as this thing that's happening on the side while your attention is actually your work. So I think even with that, like I really am intentional with how I spend my time with them. If there's ways I can help them to learn to be creative, to help that, you know, Peyton is always like practicing. He's my older son, and he's always practicing songs with me. He knows the lyrics to like all the songs I'm playing at gigs before I ever play them, just because he loves music. And so I'm just trying, like, I'm not going to set aside separate practice time. Like, we just do that together. You know, if we're playing outside, we're always just talking about textures and colors and, you know, sounds and how all those things go together. And I just really hope that there is some creative development that can happen in this crazy balance of like work and mom. I don't think they have to be totally separate in form. So yeah, I guess the only other thing I would say is that, one thing I really am starting to process more, I think, in this crazy balance juggle is how much hurry is the enemy of art. And that's what's real. I think that's where my biggest struggle is right now, just really trying to wrestle through like mom life, gig life, work life, all this stuff is so busy and it's so rushed because everything is, you know, time is so short. Everything feels urgent. But the creative mind, the creative heart needs space. It needs time. It needs peace, because the hurry just chokes the creative process. And I think the emotional outpouring of the soul is really the thing that forms the art. And so I think I'm just trying to learn, how do I actually create that kind of space so that my life isn't lived in constant hurry, and that balance is more achieved. And so I think I'm currently in my current role right now having to say no to more things than I've ever had to before, in an attempt to kind of sit a little bit more with my kids, sit a little bit more with my art, and less just like work, shuffle, rushing. Cause I think that really does kind of kill the creative spirit within.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Just kind of, even as you were talking, like it kind of came to mind too, like with all of these different pieces that you're juggling. And like we all have our different things that we're juggling, and it looks different for everyone. But then how does even just setting aside time for you fit into it? And like just putting that into perspective, it's like, oh gosh, like, and we all struggle to do that because I feel like we put ourselves last, and like ultimately we also have to fill our own spirits so that we can pour out. What does that look like for you as you're juggling these different pieces? Like, do you, do you feel like that's just another piece that you're trying to figure out as you're kind of cultivating this space, both for your art and kind of yourself almost in that?
Yeah, I think it's tricky because I have a really interesting blend. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have this personality trait, but not all artists do. I'm like a type A, like go-getter, like kind of, I don't know, type 1 on or I'm a 1 on the Enneagram, like personality, you know, all of these like driven, achieving, responsibility kind of person. But I'm also a creative, like an artist. And I love the free flowingness of that, the intentionality that comes with that. And so I think inside of me, I'm always looking for a way to figure out that blend that exists within inside of me. Like how do I still the like crazy, like achieving, like got to get this done side of me enough to let my creative spirit thrive, and vice versa. And I think it really does come from finding things that like build one side or the other of you. Like if you're a split personality, like I am in that way, like for me, I always have to temper the achieving side so that the creative side can flow and thrive. You know, it's not, I have to find things to feed the creative spirit because the achieving one is just the easy one for me. Other people have it the other way around. And so for me, I think I've found like what really fuels me and what really fuels my creative spirit. And for me, that's a lot of adventure. I'm not like just sit in the corner and read a book kind of refueler. A lot of people are. That's just not me. I'm like get me to a new place. I want to be outside. Like, let me go hiking. I want to be on the ocean. Like, let's experience new things together. And I just feel like filled up and renewed by seeing other things like outside of my normal context. So I think that's a really big thing for me. I think another big thing that's been huge for me is just a creative community. I think we shortchange that so often, but I think as artists, we just feed off of other people so much. You know, we see other people create and it just makes us want to create. We see or hear a beautiful song and I just am like, give me a guitar. I want to write a song. You know, it just really is a community-based craft, and my stuff has always gotten better by involving other people. And so I think I always have to look for ways to be around community that is artistic and pursuing an art, pursuing the creative, because that is just the thing that fuels my spirit to want to do that too. So I think those two things, and then honestly, just sleep. I am not good. I've never been good at sleeping. It's just hard for me to turn my brain off. It's hard for me to just like lay there and then somehow expect this thing to come over me that puts me to sleep. You know, just like doesn't work super well for me. But learning that, it's so hard. I don't know. People are like, let me go to bed. I'm like, no, I can stay up all night. And it's, but it's been a discipline for me because I realized the more that I sleep, the better I feel, the better I create. Like it's the better I mom. Like it's just the natural rhythm of things. Like we were designed for that. We thrive off of sleep. And so I've like continually have to go through this process of like relearning sleep and realizing I am finite and this is really important for me because I just get in trouble really fast, like on a physical level when I'm not doing that. So that's been huge for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks for speaking to that. Kind of pulling off of that as well. So you mentioned, you know, as a 1 on the Enneagram and kind of a type A personality. I'm curious, do you have any specific systems that you use to kind of help balance like different scheduling structures or things like that you use to help balance some of these pieces? I know like a lot of people listening are artists and small business owners, and that's like a huge piece is like, well, how do I juggle this? Or how can I, you know, have a part-time job as I start to, run my business. What are some ways that you personally have learned to use that type A brain and that, 1 Enneagram number to pave the way so that your artistic side has a space? Like, are there any structures you could speak to?
Yeah, I think I'm a big scheduler just because that's, I think I fought the type A-ness of my soul for a really long time, thinking that I don't want to be like that. That's not something that's good. It's funny, like our culture elevates that, and yet at the same time, like the creative community does not. And so I think I really fought that for a long time, and then realized, you know what, like I think I can use this as a strength within my art. And so I really do kind of schedule really well, just because that's the only way I think I can feel sane about things. I think knowing what's coming, and then I think it's helpful for my kids too, because there's an expectation of what my time looks like with them. Like Tuesdays, they always are with a nanny all day. That's like our Tuesdays are just always look like that. So there's never a question of like, what does today look like? I think that's hard when you're an entrepreneur. Like today is going to look different from yesterday. What will it look like? And so my Tuesdays always look the same. They go to a nanny. That's my work in the office day. That's just always like that. Wednesday, we always do this. Monday is always our grocery shopping day. Thursday, I always have as a songwriting hour. Like, I just have these things. Maybe they're not scheduled like, 11 a.m. to 12:15, like not that kind of schedule, but like I always do this thing on this day. And specifically from a household and kids perspective, that's actually really helped. So like I said, we always grocery shop on Monday. We always clean on Thursday. We always do the big things that take time and kind of tend to eat into every day if you don't just do them. I keep on days. So I there's an expectation there, and it's been really, really helpful for us. So I think that's a big thing for me, is just kind of keeping a rough schedule and then systems in place. Is that what?
Yeah, like systems and just practical, kind of just like practical tips maybe that you use to help balance all of these different aspects of life, especially that might be helpful for someone who's thinking of starting a small business or following their art. Because I know that there are a number of people in the audience that are like, they listen and some of them, they already run their own businesses and such, but some of them are kind of thinking about it, but are a little bit nervous and scared of what that could look like. So if you have any like kind of tips on what that balancing act looks like, because you do often have to wear multiple hats or balance, a steady job and not, and so on, like you already spoke to.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just utilizing systems that are out there, frankly. I mean, I'm going to get real practical here, but so we kind of have a pretty firm like Google Calendar that my husband and I share, and we live by that thing. Like it has saved our marriage, whether it's our tasks that are aligned on any given day or our schedule, just because we're always shuffling, where do the kids go and who has them, and whose time is it to work and all that. We share it, we communicate on it. That's a huge thing for us. We use an app called Todoist that tracks all of our like tasks, and I have it categorized, and it really helps me, I think, align my priorities, because I have, tasks for errands I need to run, a task for like things I need to do for the kids, what I'm doing for work at the church that I work at, what I'm doing for work independently, creative ideas that I have going on at any given point, things my husband and I need to talk about when he gets home tonight. We keep it all in this shared list system that just helps me. I think the creative side of me that always has things in my brain that need to get down, like out of my brain, having a place to just dump things is like essential for me to like be able to function on any given day. I think I keep a pretty strict system in terms of finances and budgeting, just because more finances for my business, just because you're always sending invoices and receiving payments and trying to track with deposits and stuff like that. And so I use a lot of systems, I think, that exist already, and you just got to figure out which ones work for you, but use them religiously, because it actually brings the structure, brings relief to the crazy, and at least for me, it's just been that way always. The more structure I have, I think the more freedom I actually have in my brain, in my heart, in my mind, to just pursue the art that's within me, the art that I'm always being given, just because I have to dump things. I have to put things in place, and then I can kind of be freed up to do the rest of it. So that's pretty huge for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've used Todoist a little bit here and there. I always find that I bounce around different project management systems.
Yes.
I know. But that's a good tip to religiously stick to a system.
It's tricky because new and better ones are always coming out, right? So you're like, did I miss it? Like, should I?
They are, yeah. I feel like I'm always targeted with them too because they know that I'm going to try
exactly.
them.
They like find you and put an ad your way. It's annoying.
So you talked a little bit about kind of getting outside, and you're more of like an adventurous type when like you just want to do new things together and things like that. So kind of, can you speak to how you add in the extracurricular to your life and like how that impacts your overall health and effectiveness as a mom and a musician? Can you speak to that a little bit more? I know like I have been learning a ton about just getting out and moving is so beneficial to your body and your mind because we're all interconnected, right? Like, so when we get out and we can breathe fresh air or we're, seeing new things, it's our body moving as well. So it allows us to like process emotions with our physical body. And I'd love to just kind of hear how you add that into your life, especially with other things going on. And if you just have anything to add to what movement has added into your life, that would be awesome.
It's honestly been so good for me having kids because movement is a part of all day, every day. I never stop running. It's literally all day. We're, adventuring, doing things, and it's adventuring to the grocery store. I mean, it's not necessarily going to, hike a mountain, but we try to do both. I think my husband and I are really aligned in our passion for that and how much it gives us life to just be out in creation and outside, just seeing all the beautiful things that are to see, and it just fills you up, just breathing fresh air. Like you said, it's as simple as that. But we try, so I work, I really try, and I often fail. So hear that when I say this, but we really try to work Sunday to Thursday. My husband and I both work at a church, so Sundays are almost always just church stuff going on from like 6 a.m. till, the evening. It's just a busy day. And then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is just a lot of like work stuff here and there. He's working like pretty full time at a church. I'm doing like the mom random gig, like work for church stuff Monday to Thursday. And then I try to just do like one gig on the weekends if I do one. Not every weekend. A lot of times I try to grab the corporate stuff that's during the week because it's just easier on our family as much as I can. So for the most part, we'll, if I have a gig on the weekend, it's usually in the evening anyway. So we have Friday during the day and Saturday during the day. And we try to really protect that. I'm not good at this. I'm a work in process, just trying to figure out how to get everything done so that we can protect, at least one day, if not two. So lately we've been landing on Friday. Saturday I often have a gig, and it's also the day before Sunday. So we kind of are already in the mental space of getting ready for that next day. But Friday we just try, we can do this for a day. Just set aside this time, go and do something really fun. I think tomorrow, or what is it? Today's Wednesday, but I think on Friday we're going to go sunflower picking. We just like try to look and find something that's just like fun and outdoors that gets us out, but also helps us create memories as a family. And honestly, stuff that's just not related to anything work or church or anything, just because I think we need to be together and not be working. And so, like I said, it's constantly a struggle. I really, want everyone to hear me say that. Like, I feel like I just see superhumans all the time, and I've just learned there are none. And so it's a struggle, but you do have to fight for it. You have to figure out how to set those boundaries so that you don't just work all the time, but also prioritize play, because I think play leads to a lot of the energy that you need to both create and also just work effectively. And so that's what we are just learning right now. How do we play as a family? How do we create memories as a family that aren't just like rushing from thing to thing that it so often turns into during the week? So
that's awesome. I love that idea of just like picking sunflowers, and like that's not a difficult thing to do. It's something fun and light that you can kind of add into your day. Like, you see people on Instagram all the time, and it's these really extravagant things and trips and all of this big stuff. But the reality is sometimes it's going out into a field and picking sunflowers. Like, it's the simple things that you can figure out to do they build memories, and it allows your mind a break.
And you have to figure out what that is for you and lean into your strengths. So for us, we love adventuring, and I'm a scheduler, and so is my husband. So we like look out 6 weeks in advance and say, okay, we have a free Saturday. Let's like do a big hike, or let's, do this, and let's get out and do sunflower picking or whatever it is. For other people, I'm sure it's like oh, there's the day like we're going to be home all day and do nothing, like maybe that's what actually refuels somebody else. And there are actually those days for us too, where we're like, we have been out and about, let's just hang. But most of the time I think we're more like, how can we go build a memory? And sometimes we actually align them. Like I had a gig last weekend in Monterey, which is a couple-hour drive from here. And so we decided, let's go as a family and spend an overnight and do 2 days there. And I'll do a gig the next day. And it was like the first day was so fun. We hung out as a family all day and just made a big adventure. And then the next day was like insane. I was like we pull up to this really fancy event center and I'm like getting all my gig equipment out, and we had to like pull out the double stroller first, and my kids are both screaming in the car just to get to the other equipment, and then put it all back and then have them drive off as quickly as possible as to not disrupt anything else. And, so I think sometimes it comes at a cost, and I always say that, or we do as a family, like we remember like adventure often comes at a cost. But it's worth it to us. Like, even if we have memories from this last weekend of like kids screaming and melting down and trying to play this gig, knowing that my husband's trying to like manage kids like 3 miles away, like, that kind of thing. It was like crazy, but like we also remember like beautiful, fun things and things we experienced together and food we had together. And to us, it's just always been worth the cost, even if it's turned into a terrible situation at some point,
Yeah, for some reason that brings to mind like when people decide to go to the beach, and I know you go to the beach a lot. I didn't grow up going to the beach a lot, or like still don't go to the beach a lot, but I feel like that's what I picture in my brain, is just like you go to the beach and you have a great time, and then suddenly there's sand everywhere and you're getting in the car and it's just like, oh my gosh, like I don't know. That's just
that's very accurate. There's so many, I think, and this happens to us all the time because we are adventurers and we're just like, okay, let's go do this. And then we get there and we're like, why did we think this would be fun? Okay, like switch plans. Like this is not fun. Like, we've got a kid that's not walking yet. And we've decided like, the beach will be fun after he starts walking, because kids crawling and eating sand is just not fun. So we've kind of put a hiatus on the beach until he starts walking. You just kind of adjust as you go about it to make it work in whatever season that you're in.
So kind of diverting a little bit, I'd love to know, kind of with all of this stuff in mind, and you have a lot of things going on, what are some of the driving values that lead you on a daily basis that like kind of are your goalposts, I guess, that would help you set boundaries throughout your day-to-day and as you're kind of figuring out your schedule?
Yeah, I think, well, the first one that comes to mind for me is just presence. And I say this is a high value. It is. It's also probably the one I have the hardest time with, but it's probably because I consider it such a high value. And it's just being present in whatever it is I am doing. I see this mostly with my kids and my husband, I think, because my brain is always going a million miles a minute, just always thinking of the next thing I should be doing. And I just don't want my relationship with them to be a part of that rat race. I really want to just be present with them when I'm in conversation, when we're adventuring together, when we're just playing with blocks on the floor together, like that would be something that they would know, like they have my body, yes, but they have my mind and my heart too. But then when I'm gigging or when I'm playing or performing or leading worship or in ministry somewhere, like I want to be fully present there too, so that they know, I've done the gig too often where you're just on autopilot, and there's a place for that where you just have to kind of get the job done. But I think music is such an expression of the soul. It's such a full body experience for me that's just like emotion that's just running through me, coming out my fingers, coming out of my voice. And when I allow myself to just be present in it, it just changes how that music is received, how people are impacted, how lives are changed through that. And so I just think I've been really working on that for a couple of years now, and I just keep striving for that. Just how do I just be present? And I just think it's a big value for me. I think along the same lines, I really want to honor people and honor the Lord. I'm a believer. I believe that God made me and he gave me gifts to use for his glory. So I really want to honor him with all that I do. I really want to honor my family with how I interact with them and what I do with work when I'm around them. I really want to honor my clients and what they've asked me to do and how much they've entrusted to me by hiring me for whatever it is. So I think I think of that a lot. What am I doing? And is what I'm doing honoring to all of those people that I've been asked to serve or to, work for. And then I think the third one that comes to mind as I'm processing just the things that drive me on any given day is just that community. And I spoke to this a little bit earlier, but it is no fun, like functioning. And this is what's, I think, super hard for entrepreneurs or people that own their own business, or a small business of any sort, is it's so easy to get lonely. It's so easy to feel isolated. It's so easy to go from, and what's tricky about it is you go from this total isolation. You're planning, you're working, you're like at your computer, on the phone, whatever it is. And then all of a sudden, at least when you're a musician or a performer, you're in front of like hundreds of people, or, thousands of people, or whatever it is, like the next minute. And so you kind of go often from this like isolated experience to like on 1,000%. And so I've just learned, for me, like I have to build community life, specifically like creative community life, into my daily rhythm, because it feeds my creative drive. It feeds my spirit. It feeds my creating. But it also helps me walk that line from feeling isolated to feeling completely exposed and vulnerable in front of so many people, because you're kind of in community, creating with people, seeing and being inspired by other people's art. And so I do that really practically through a couple ways. I'm a big starter. That's just a strength of mine. And so I love starting groups for, like I have a songwriting circle going right now. We meet once a month, and everybody just brings a song that they're working on, and we just kind of share our songs with each other, and we like help give feedback and move songs along and just develop that like songwriting community. I think a lot of the work I do at church is, other people that are just like-minded in what we do. And so we kind of work together towards an end. And that just really feeds me. The more I do like team-based things, the more I feel excited about what we're doing. And so I think it's just important for me just to have community as a part, not just in friendship, that's absolutely important, but in terms of just feeding your creative spirit, just having that as a part of everything you do, having those friends that you can just send the random voice memo to, like, hey, I just wrote this song. What do you think? Or this is a hook I have. Want to use it? Like whatever it is. I think I'm just really trying to be super intentional with what that looks like, and model that for my kids as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. So kind of then off of the values, who are some of your kind of favorite role models, specifically in relation to your business and as you grow that, and as you're developing your career, like as an ongoing life thing? Who are some of your favorite role models and like mindset expanders, people that you kind of like look up to on a regular basis?
Yeah, for me, it's kind of strange. I'm not a big reader. I'm not a big researcher, I guess. And so a lot of the people that have really inspired me or shown me a way of living this or doing this, or even like expanded my perspective, have been people within my community. It's been people that I've built relationship with on a personal level. A lot of just like big leaders in the areas with which I've led, that are, either within the church or within my field of music, that are just what I would perceive as like killing it out there, doing an amazing job. And I just am really proactive with reaching out to those people and building relationships and hoping that they'll just rub off on me, because I need that, and just gaining wisdom wherever I can. So they're not even just like names on a page. They're just people that I know, especially within the realm of just like really capable women that have really strong callings, and just seeing how they have pursued those callings, especially alongside motherhood. I think I've been really inspired by people within my community who have done that well. But I listen to a lot of podcasts, especially ones that kind of towards the creative bent. There's one called The Accidental Creative, and All Songs Considered, and just ones that talk about, for me, the ones that are creative process driven, really help me, because it makes me, every artist kind of gets into ruts, or, you have this wall all of a sudden, you're like, where did that wall come from? I feel stuck. And so I think listening to other artists talk about their creative process always helps me feel like I can get unstuck in a way. Because I could tap into their, borrow their mindset for a minute enough to get out of my block. And so I do a lot of listening. I'd listen to a lot of music. I know that probably seems obvious, but for me, a lot of singer-songwriter or indie stuff, really, I think, because they're really story-based. And so they really tap into that part of me that just wants to relate and wants to be a part of and to see perspective of and all of those things. And so for me, that type of music is always the thing that really inspires me to write more. And then I've been actually reading this book lately, and I'm not through with it, so it's kind of hard to recommend it at this point, but so far it's amazing. It's called The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and it's kind of about working through that mental block and helping you just achieve higher creativity. She goes through this process of like just basically lifting your creativity and encouraging that spirit and just really giving you practical exercises to kind of overcome some serious just blocks that you have at any given point. And it's been really helpful for me. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, those are the things that come to mind.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look up that book because that sounds really interesting. I always love like you kind of what you were saying is just different books that have processes or just different perspectives on how to overcome creative blocks. I feel like can always be so helpful because everyone brings a different voice to it, and no matter what situation you're in, I feel like when you reach someone else who's been in a place like that, it just helps to have like a bridge essentially that you can utilize, that someone's gone on that path before you.
Yeah, and I think we so often think of creative process is like too linear. I think we think, like songwriting. Oh, songwriting looks like you sitting in the corner with your guitar with a candle lit and pumping out a song. Like, it's just not how it works. Like, I think when you're creative, like you're always creating, and it's not linear. It like happens. Like the best songs I've written started in the shower and were finished on the highway. Like it's just like that how it works. It's just not. It's not this like super linear process. And similarly, I think when those blocks come and you're just like stuck, it's there's not one way to just get out of it. And so we have to kind of borrow other people's methods. And I think anything that can kind of inspire is just a great stepping point to like getting past whatever block or whatever mountain feels like it's in front of you, thriving again. It's just good to have some methods, I think, to kind of bring those down continually. So yeah, it's been helpful for me.
That's awesome. So kind of just like a few final questions really to wrap things up is I'm curious, how do you start your morning?
Ooh, it's a great question. On a good day,
I'm sure
or
it looks different.
How
about one of each?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, if there's one thing I've learned being a mom, it is that predictability is not a strength. It's just not of kids. Like they are so random, and like some days my kids will sleep till 7. That's a late morning. Oftentimes they're up at like 5:30 or 6, and there's nothing. We've tried everything. There's nothing we can do to get them to sleep later. So my mornings used to look like just starting like with like a cup of coffee, and then I go work out and then come home, and it's just rare is the day that happens. I wish it happened more, but I try to work out in the morning. I love just getting my body moving, my brain moving, my heart moving. And I'm a morning person. So I say this knowing that a lot of people aren't. And like people that work out in the morning are like annoying because it's just so hard to understand as not a morning person how that's possible. But I am a morning person. And so for me, just getting like the blood flowing, the brain moving, like all of those things, like first thing in the morning is like, it literally changes the entire course of my day every time I do it. So I just have to remember that when I wake up, like it is worth it. It is worth it. And then get myself out the door because it just makes the biggest difference. And so, I mean, quite frankly, right now it's happening like 3 times a week at the most. Like I'm not nailing it every day by any stretch of the imagination.
That's better than me right now. So 3 times a week is like, that's like my goal.
That's a good week. I tell you, like off like this week, I've only gone once and it's already halfway through the week. And so I'm like, okay, I will go tomorrow. I have to like psych myself into it. But I think I've just seen the fruit of it so much that like, the more I can do that, the better I am. But also I really try, and I go through kind of seasons of this where like I'm better at it than others, but I've read and heard so much about just the stream of consciousness writing kind of benefit for the creative mind. And I've seen a lot of that within my own experience too. So whether that's journaling for me, like it might be prayer journaling or just like stream of consciousness writing. If there's any point that I can just like integrate that into the beginning of my day, I'm just freshest in the beginning. Like some people can do it in the evenings, but it just really helps me to kind of reset or like center myself and figure out where am I starting this day? What are the things that I've like had on my mind? I mean, like I said, sleep is hard for me. So oftentimes whatever I was thinking about when I fell asleep is in my dreams. And so I kind of start the day with this like mind full of confusing thoughts and experiences and whatnot. And so I think a stream of consciousness, right, is just, it always helps me somehow. So, so yeah, some combination of working out if I get there, stream of consciousness, writing. I spend a lot of time in the Bible if I can in the mornings, and absolutely a lot of coffee. My husband roasts coffee, and so that is an essential part of every morning. So that's how we kind of begin it, or how I begin my day.
Nice. Alex, my husband, he was roasting coffee for a little while, and it was great to have like the fresh coffee. I don't know. It tastes so good.
Amazing. It's amazing. I don't think we will ever go back. So
that's awesome. Another question that I have is you talked quite a bit about working out, but kind of what does that workout routine look like? That's something I just even remember when I worked with you way back in the marketing department. I always admired how even then I feel like that was still part of your routine. And I know that that's probably shifted over the years, and I've seen you post on Instagram recently. You shared your routine a little bit with me. But for anybody listening, like, do you have any tips on working out, or are you willing to kind of share a little bit of your routine?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for me, working out, it's always been something I've done, but it's mostly been because my mental self is better when I work out. I think there's so much related to like endorphins and air, like oxygen in your blood and things like that actually change your mental space. That for me, it's my routine is closely linked to my like thriving in other areas of my life. So that's what keeps me consistent, because I know like I actually become a different person when I don't do that. And so I think I'm passionate about people realizing what a difference that could make for those that are struggling with that. So, so my routine kind of varies week to week based on what we have going on, and honestly, just how many late nights I've had. But what I try to do is start with a run. Anytime I work out, it's just really helpful, I think, from a metabolism perspective to get that going right away. And cardio just is the thing that gets all those things flowing and releasing. And so for me, that's a big part of what I start with each day. And I am not like a distance runner. I'm talking like 1 to 3 miles. Like 3 miles is like I killed it today. Like I'm not like a crazy amazing runner. My best friend is like 5 miles every morning, and that's awesome for her, but I'm not that person. I just try to run a little bit to feel like I've got that stuff flowing. And then I try to do an arm routine like 2 days a week. They're different, and so one of them they just work different parts, and so it just keeps me kind of toned in that way. And then we always just try to do something active as a family on the weekends, and I just count that as a workout. So that might be a hike, that might be a bike ride. We have a farmer's market close by. We often bike to that. It might be a walk, something, but we just try to be outside as a family doing something active that we kind of count as a workout. My husband and I kind of made a deal when we first got married that we wanted to really help encourage and enable each other to stay in shape and just do that well, because it's a value we both have. And so we just trade off. So like yesterday I got to work out. I worked out super early in the morning. I really try to do it before my kids are up, if I can. And then this morning he left and did a long run this morning, and I had the kids when they first got up, and we try to kind of balance it out in that way. So we don't each get the chance to work out every day, but we try to alternate so that we support the other person doing it and not hold it against the other person when that person has kid duty right when they wake up. So we balance it out in that way, and we try to do it around who has a late night the night before so that they're not the one getting up the next morning. So it's a lot of just kind of balance and communication, and also just agreeing that that's a value enough to help support each other do that well.
For sure. True co-parenting.
Yes, true co-parenting.
I love it. Awesome. Well, kind of as we wrap up here, how can people find you online? Where is your music?
Yeah. My music is available on all kind of major platforms like Spotify and Apple Music and all that. Or on my website. I also have a blog there at linzywestman.com. So LINZY.com. And my handle too on all social media is just my name at Linzy Westman. So those are all my spots.
Awesome. Any final thoughts that you want to impart to the listeners, or any new releases or projects that people can be kind of keeping an eye out for? Just anything to wrap up that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just want to say an encouragement to moms that maybe are really in this middle. There's the moms that really feel called to be home with their kids full time all the time, and that's a beautiful calling. Like, that's an amazing thing. And there's moms that also have the calling to be working full time. Their kids are in childcare, but they are like killing it in the career field, and that's awesome. And then the rest of us are kind of in this middle ground of, oh, we want to do both, but how do we do it? And it is really tricky. It's hard. It's ever changing. You're probably never going to feel like you're killing it on any level, but it's worth the battle, I think. And it's really trying to find, not being swayed or influenced or feeling intimidated by what somebody else is doing. I catch myself in this all the time, especially with social media, just like, they've figured it out and I am failing. And I think it's just having a lot of grace and just realize it for yourself and realizing like, this is a battle. It's always going to be a battle as long as I'm trying to walk this calling right in the middle of like working and being a mom, and just to have a lot of grace for yourself on the daily and realize, I did the best I could do today and tomorrow will be better. Just keeping your priorities aligned. Like my kids, I want them to know I'm present with them. My work, I want to know I'm present there too. But that those two things can't happen at the same time. So what does this, chunk of the day look like? How do I do this later? And just always having that dialogue, I think, with yourself and trying to have grace for yourself on the times when you fail, and just realize it is a battle and it's a struggle. And in my opinion, it's worth it because it's a joy to be able to, on the other side, be able to pursue that dual calling, that dual passion. So I think that would just be my final thought. Try to not base your success on what you think other people are doing, because I guarantee you they're just as much in the struggle as you are. So, and then I think I'm kind of working on just to what projects might be coming up. I'm really, in the past, all the stuff I've released has been within the stuff I've done within kind of Christian music and the worship community. But I'm really trying to figure out if I might do a project. Sorry, let me reword that. I'm working on a project right now that kind of taps into a really different genre for me. It's like I've always released kind of worship music and Christian types of music, and I'm really passionate about that. But I've written a ton of just like singer-songwriter story level songs that just are me processing life, and I feel like those are the songs I'm getting right now. Those are the songs that I'm just being filled with right now. And so I kind of am thinking about doing kind of just a side project with a bunch of those songs that just are like an expression of a really different side of me that I haven't let everyone into yet. So I'm looking at maybe recording that and releasing something next year. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Awesome. That's so exciting. That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I'm really excited to hear what new things that project sounds amazing. And I just want to say thanks so much for being on here with me. It's great.
Thanks for having me, Megan.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of the Reclamation Podcast. I hope it served you on your own reclamation journey, and know that I'm rooting for you all the way. If you want to learn more about the show guests, head to the website, thereclamationpodcast.com. And if you found value in the show, 5 stars is always appreciated. Good things are coming for you. Bye for now.